I used to believe that family was something unchangeable. That no matter what happened, no matter what I did, my parents would always be my parents, and home would always be home. But I was wrong. They showed me that sometimes, family isn't a place to return to. It's a place to leave. And for me, that moment came when I was 18. I am Olivia Carter, the second daughter in a family where discipline was everything. The house I grew up in wasn't a home, it was more like a military camp, where every action, every word had to follow strict rules. My father, Thomas Carter, was a university professor who took great pride in running our family with the same rigid discipline as one of his classrooms. Every evening at dinner he sat at the head of the table, controlling everything, from the way I sat to each bite of food I placed on my plate. "Olivia, sit up straight. Don't you see how sloppy you look?" He would glare at me whenever I slouched even slightly. I would reluctantly adjust my posture, but the moment he looked away, I'd quietly relax my shoulders again. I never understood why keeping my back straight was so important, when all I wanted was to breathe freely for just a moment. My mother, Margaret Carter, wasn't as strict as my father, but she had her own way of making me feel like I was never good enough. She didn't need to yell. A single disappointed look from her was enough to make me feel like I had done something terribly wrong. And her favorite phrase was always, "What will people think of you?" It didn't matter what I did, and it certainly didn't matter if I was happy. What mattered to her was how our neighbors, my father's colleagues and their friends would perceive our family, and if I didn't fit into the perfect image they wanted to present, then it was my fault. In contrast, my older sister, Rebecca Carter, was their pride and joy. She was perfect by every standard they set, always excelling in school, always obedient, always ready to help whenever guests came over. Rebecca never defied our parents, never broke a single rule. I knew that in their eyes, I was nothing but a disappointment. A child who refused to obey, who didn't behave properly, who always fell short of their expectations. But I didn't care. I didn't want to be like Rebecca. I wanted a life of my own, a future I could shape instead of being forced into a mold I didn't belong in. And that's why, when I met Ethan, I didn't hesitate to throw myself into the relationship. He was 3 years older than me, a college student with messy hair and a defiant smile that challenged every rule. Ethan was everything my parents would despise. Reckless, rebellious, and completely indifferent to what people might think. I knew that if they found out they would never accept it, so I kept it a secret. My relationship with Ethan became my hidden refuge, a part of my life that my parents couldn't control. When I was with him, I wasn't the Carter family's rebellious daughter. I was just Olivia. A young woman who wanted to live life on her own terms. But I didn't know that this choice would lead me to the biggest turning point of my life. A turning point from which I could never turn back. I don't remember exactly when I first felt that something was wrong. Maybe it was the first time I woke up in the morning with nausea rising in my throat. Or maybe it was when I suddenly realized my jeans felt tighter, even though I hadn't changed my diet. But I didn't think too much about it. It's just stress, I told myself. Maybe it was the pressure of graduation exams, or the constant sneaking out to see Ethan without my parents finding out. But when it continued for weeks, a vague sense of fear began creeping into my mind. I needed to be sure. That afternoon, I slipped into a small pharmacy outside my neighborhood. My heart pounded as I walked up to the checkout counter, avoiding the cashier's gaze. I quickly stuffed the pregnancy test into my coat pocket and walked out as fast as I could. 10 minutes later, I was standing in the cramped bathroom of a gas station, gripping the test stick so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes for a moment, then looked down at the result. 2 lines. The world seemed to tilt. It felt like the ground beneath me was crumbling. I was pregnant. I didn't know how long I stood there, but when I finally stepped out of the restroom, my legs felt weak. The icy wind brushed against my face, but I couldn't feel anything anymore. Only one thought echoed in my mind. What am I going to do? Ethan. I had to tell Ethan. That night, I texted him to meet me at the park where we always went. When he saw me, Ethan smiled brightly, but it quickly faded when he noticed the tension in my face. "What's wrong, Olivia?" I clenched my hands together, trying to steady my voice. "I'm pregnant?" Silence wrapped around us. I could see every emotion flicker across his face. Shock, confusion, and then fear. "Are you sure?" He swallowed hard, his eyes locked onto mine. I nodded. Ethan took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "We can't keep it, Olivia." His words cut through me like a cold, sharp blade. "What? We're too young. I just started college and you haven't even graduated. If you keep the baby, it will ruin both of our futures." "Our future?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Ethan, this isn't just about you. This is my baby too." He looked at me, and suddenly, his eyes felt distant. "You need to get rid of it, Olivia. It's the only choice." I shook my head as tears burned down my cheeks. I couldn't believe that the person I trusted most could say something like that. "If you don't, then don't expect me to take any responsibility." He stood up, shoving his hands into his pockets. "I don't want to be involved in this." I watched his back as he walked away, each step crushing my heart beneath his feet. And that was when I realized I was completely alone. I waited a few days before telling my parents, even though I already knew how they would react. After dinner, while my father was reading the newspaper and my mother was tidying up the kitchen, I stood in the middle of the living room and took a deep breath. "I have something to say." My father didn't look up, but I knew he heard me. "What is it?" I clenched my hands into fists. "I'm pregnant." The spoon in my mother's hand fell to the floor, creating a sharp, piercing sound. My father slowly lowered his newspaper, his cold, razor-sharp gaze slicing through me. "What did you just say?" His voice was low, but dangerously firm. "I'm pregnant," I repeated, even though my heart was pounding so hard I thought I might collapse right there. "Who's the father?" he growled. "It doesn't matter," I whispered. My mother burst into tears, while my father shot up from his seat. "You will get rid of it." His tone left no room for argument. "We will find a discreet clinic. No one needs to know about this." I shook my head as tears welled up in my eyes. "I can't." "Olivia, you will." "If I do, I might never be able to have children again." My voice cracked. "That's what the doctor said." Silence stretched between us. And then, my father exhaled sharply, his eyes filled with nothing but contempt. "Then leave this house." I froze. "What?" "You are no longer my daughter." His voice was cold, unforgiving. "I will not let you disgrace this family. Pack your things and go, now." My mother stood still. No objections, no pleading. Rebecca said nothing either. They had made their choice. And I knew from that moment on, I was no longer a part of this family. I stepped out into the night, carrying a small bag with a few clothes and a despair too deep to measure. The door slammed shut behind me with a final, resounding echo. A definitive end to everything I had once called home. I didn't know how long I walked, only that my feet kept moving forward, though I had no destination. I considered calling Ethan but quickly pushed the thought away. He had made his choice, and it was clear I wasn't part of it. I had no close friends to turn to either. My parents had always controlled my social circle, limiting it to people they deemed worthy of association. But then, one name came to mind. Aunt Helen. She was my mother's younger sister, the only person in the family who had ever shown me an ounce of kindness. As a child, I remembered her sneaking candy into my hands whenever I was punished for some trivial mistake. She once told me that I deserved to be loved in my own way, not the way my parents dictated. But because of her differences with my mother, she had moved to a small town in another state and rarely visited. With trembling fingers I dialed her number. "Olivia?" Her voice came through, filled with concern. I broke down in tears. "Aunt Helen?" They threw me out. There was a brief silence on the other end before she spoke, without hesitation. "Where are you? I'm coming to get you." Aunt Helen lived in Asheville, a small town over 3 hours away from the place I once called home. Her house was modest but warm. Nothing like the cold, pristine perfection my parents had always maintained. When I stepped inside, she wrapped her arms around me. A simple gesture, but one I had never received from my own mother. "You're staying here," she said firmly, not giving me a chance to refuse. Aunt Helen wasn't wealthy, but she had saved up a decent amount after years of working as an accountant. When I told her I wanted to continue my education, she simply smiled. "I always knew you were a strong girl. I have some savings, and if you're willing to work hard, I'll help you." I could hardly believe it. After losing everything, someone was willing to help me stand up again. But I knew I couldn't rely solely on her kindness. So as soon as I settled into my new life in Asheville, I started looking for a job. After days of walking through town, filling out applications wherever I could, I finally got hired at a small cafe, where the owner, Miss Linda, seemed to sympathize when she noticed my growing belly. "I was a single mother once," she said, glancing at me. "I know what it's like. I'll give you a chance." I cried when I heard those words. The next few months were a true test. I spent my days attending classes at a local community college, worked evening shifts at the cafe, and by the time I got home, I was so exhausted that sometimes I barely made it to my bed before collapsing. But I never allowed myself to give up. Aunt Helen helped me apply for support programs for single mothers, making sure I saved every penny for my baby's future. Miss Linda occasionally let me take leftover food from the cafe, helping me stretch my savings even further. And then, the day arrived. After 12 hours of agonizing labor, I heard my son's first cry. Tears streamed down my face as the nurse placed the tiny baby in my arms. I looked down at his small, delicate face. Big, round eyes. A tiny mouth. Soft skin like an angel. In that moment, I knew nothing in this world mattered more than him. Aunt Helen stood beside my bed, her eyes glistening with tears. "Have you thought of a name?" she asked. I gazed at my son, my heart overflowing with love. "Noah," I whispered. "His name is Noah." Because Noah means peace, and after all the storms I had endured, I knew I had finally found mine. I never thought I would come this far. 4 years ago, I stood on my parents' doorstep with a small bag and not a single dollar in my pocket, cast out like a stranger. Now, I held a degree in business administration, with Noah, my son, being the greatest motivation that kept me going. Without Aunt Helen, I might never have made it to this day. She wasn't just the person who gave me a home. She was the one who made me believe I could do it. She paid for my first year of college, just enough to get me started. But the rest was up to me. I took on every job I could to make ends meet. Brewing coffee, waiting tables, cleaning floors. There were nights I was so exhausted that I fell asleep on my desk. But I never stopped. Because every morning, when Noah woke up and smiled brightly at me, I knew I couldn't stop. During my final year of college, I worked night shifts at a small diner called Rosie's, where the owner, Miss Linda, wasn't just my boss, she had become like a second aunt to me. She was a sharp, no-nonsense woman with a tough exterior, but beneath it all, she was kind and understanding. One evening, after the dinner rush, as I was wiping down tables, Miss Linda walked over and placed an envelope on the table. "What's this?" I asked, confused. "A bonus," she smiled. "And an offer." I raised an eyebrow. "An offer?" Miss Linda folded her arms, her expression serious. "I'm retiring soon, Olivia. I need someone to take over this place, and I think it should be you." I was stunned. "You're joking. You've worked here for 3 years. You know the customers, you understand how to manage the staff, and most importantly, you're responsible. You'd run this place better than anyone I could hire from the outside." I could hardly believe it. After years of struggling, I finally had a real chance to change my life. And I said yes. 3 years later, Rosie's became one of the most beloved diners in town. I had expanded the menu, upgraded the interior, but, most importantly, I kept its spirit alive. A cozy, welcoming place, where anyone could find a good meal and a warm smile. Noah was now 6 years old, a bright and energetic little boy with sparkling eyes. Every morning before I took him to school, he insisted on helping me arrange the tables at the diner, as if it were the most important job in the world. I never imagined my life could be this peaceful. Until I met Nathan Parker. Nathan walked into Rosie's on a crisp, autumn afternoon, holding the hand of a small blonde-haired boy. At first, I didn't pay much attention as the diner was busy. But when I brought their menus to the table, Noah suddenly exclaimed, "Owned. Mom, this is my friend from school." I looked down and realized that the little boy sitting across from me was Caleb, Noah's best friend. And the man sitting across from him, Nathan, was his father. Nathan had a gentle smile, but in his eyes there was something fleeting, a deep, quiet sorrow. "This little guy wouldn't stop talking about the grilled cheese here, so I had to bring him to try it," he chuckled, ruffling Caleb's hair. I laughed. "Well, let me get the best one for you both." And just like that, we started talking. I learned that Nathan was an engineer, a widower who had lost his wife 3 years ago, and had been raising Caleb on his own ever since. He learned that I was a single mother, that I had Noah, and soon enough, we became friends. But over time that friendship grew into something more. A year later, Nathan proposed to me. It wasn't some grand extravagant proposal with hundreds of roses or a fancy restaurant. It was just a quiet evening in my backyard, where the kids were playing on the grass, and he gently took my hand. "Olivia, you've been through so much pain in your life. I can't promise to make you forget the bad things, but I promise that the rest of your life will be filled with happiness." And I said yes. 2 years later, we welcomed our baby girl Sophia. I once thought I would always be alone, that my life was nothing but loss. But as I looked around the dinner table, Noah and Caleb laughing together, Nathan holding Sophia in his arms, I realized something. Family isn't about the people who gave birth to you. Family is about the ones who stay. One evening, like any other, I was folding laundry in the living room. Noah and Caleb were sitting on the floor, piecing together a puzzle, while Nathan rocked Sophia gently in his arms, humming a lullaby. A peaceful warmth filled our little home. Until a familiar voice echoed from the TV. "I believe in the values of family. I believe that a strong family is the foundation of a good society." My hands froze. I turned to the screen and my heart clenched. My father, Thomas Carter, stood on a podium, his expression serious but exuding confidence. Below him, a crowd clapped enthusiastically, and a news ticker scrolled across the screen. "Professor Thomas Carter officially announces his candidacy for mayor." A surge of anger flared in my chest. That man, the one who had cast me out without hesitation, who had thrown me away to save his own reputation, was now standing there, preaching about family values. Nathan looked at me, noticing the shift in my expression. "Do you want me to turn it off?" I shook my head, my eyes still fixed on the screen. "No, I want to hear just how far his lies will go." My father continued his speech, speaking about responsibility, about sacrificing for your children, about the importance of building a united family. I let out a bitter laugh. He had never lived up to any of those words. And then, his next sentence made my blood run cold. "My wife Margaret and I are fortunate to have a small, happy family. Our daughter Rebecca is our greatest pride." Not a single word about me, not a single word about Noah. As if we had never existed. Nathan placed a hand on my shoulder and gave it a gentle squeeze. Olivia. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to stay steady. He erased me. But I won't let him keep doing it. That night, after the kids had fallen asleep, Aunt Helen came over. When I told her what I had just seen on TV, she stayed silent for a long time. And then, with a deep sigh, her eyes filled with hesitation, she said, "There's something I've never told you." I frowned. "What is it?" Aunt Helen sat down across from me, a flicker of hesitation in her eyes. "Before your parents had Rebecca, and you? They had another child." The room fell silent. I wasn't sure if I had misheard her. "What did you say?" Aunt Helen bit her lip as if battling an internal struggle. "Your parents once had a son, but he was born with a congenital disability. He had no legs." I froze. "Ing. What did they do to him?" Aunt Helen swallowed hard. "They left him at the hospital. Never came back." A surge of anger twisted inside me. I thought I had already known every terrible thing my parents were capable of, but it turned out I had barely scratched the surface. "So, is he alive? Did someone adopt him?" Aunt Helen nodded. "Yes, a wealthy family adopted him. They named him Ryan Evans. He's now a fairly well-known writer." Ryan Evans. A jolt ran through me. I had heard that name before. I had never read his books, but I had seen his name in articles, in interviews about resilience and overcoming adversity. And I had never known that he was my brother. Nathan placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder, his eyes full of support. "What are you going to do?" I looked at the framed picture of my little family. Noah, Caleb, Sophia. Then I looked at Nathan. "I'm going to find him. I wouldn't let another person be erased by my parents." It didn't take long to find Ryan Evans. He was a famous writer, and the internet was full of articles and information about him. But what shocked me the most was an upcoming event. A book signing and public Q&A session happening right in my hometown. I knew my parents would be there. As a mayoral candidate campaigning for office, my father wouldn't miss the chance to be seen at a major cultural event like this, where he could once again preach about family values in front of an audience. I knew this was the perfect moment. I reached out to the event organizers and sent a short email to Ryan through his personal website. I didn't expect an immediate response. Or any response at all. Unfortunately. But within a day, my phone rang. A deep, steady voice came through the line. "Olivia, this is Ryan." My breath caught in my throat. Hearing him say my name, in a voice both familiar and foreign, made me freeze for a moment. I had never had a brother. But somehow, deep down, I knew we had belonged to each other all along. I swallowed hard. "We need to meet." Over the next 3 days, I told Ryan everything. About our parents. About how they had abandoned him. Then later, abandoned me. About Noah. About how our father was standing on TV, preaching about family, while being the very man who had destroyed his own. Ryan didn't say much as I spoke. He just listened, his sharp, deep-set eyes absorbing every word. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. "They forgot about me a long time ago," he said, his voice calm and steady. "But they won't be able to forget about you." Then, he smiled. "Come to my book signing, we'll finish this together." The day of the event, the grand hall of the city center was packed. Banners hung high, promoting Ryan's latest book. An inspiring story about resilience, about overcoming adversity. I stood at the back of the hall, scanning the crowd. And then, I saw them. My parents. Rebecca. They sat in the front row. My father with the perfect politician's smile, my mother in an elegant dress, Rebecca looking as flawless as ever. I wondered if she knew the truth about Ryan. But when I saw the indifference in her eyes, I realized that even if she did, she wouldn't care. Ryan stepped onto the stage to thunder's applause. He began speaking about his book, about his life, about being abandoned at birth, about growing up in another family, about how he had to fight to prove his worth. And then, he paused, his eyes sweeping across the audience. "I've always wondered about my origins," he said, his voice warm yet heavy. "I've always wondered why my birth parents abandoned me. And now, I finally have the answer." The room fell into a deep silence. Ryan turned his gaze to the front row. They're here today. All eyes shifted toward my parents. I saw the color drain from my father's face. My mother stiffen. Rebecca's eyes widen in shock. Ryan continued. My parents abandoned me because I wasn't perfect. They left me in a hospital the day I was born, afraid that my existence would tarnish their image. Whispers spread through the crowd. I saw journalists jotting down notes. Cameras zooming in on my father, who was trying to maintain his composure, but his eyes betrayed his panic. Ryan took a deep breath. And then they did it again. He turned to me and gave a small nod. I knew it was my turn. I stood up and walked toward the stage. The murmurs grew louder. I looked straight at my parents. They threw me out of the house when I was 18. Pregnant. My voice trembled, but I didn't stop. They didn't want me to bring shame to the family. They forced me to get an abortion. When I refused, they abandoned me. Just like they abandoned Ryan. A heavy silence engulfed the room. And then, the outrage began. I heard gasps of shock, saw reporters scrambling to record every word. I looked at my father, the man who had prided himself on controlling everything. Now, he looked like a cornered animal. And I knew. He had lost. In the following days, the story spread like wildfire. Major newspapers picked it up. The public was furious, demanding my father withdraw from the election. 3 weeks later, he announced his withdrawal from the mayoral race. His political career crumbled. My parents left town shortly after, trying to escape the scrutiny of the public eye. Rebecca disappeared with them, leaving no trace behind. As for me, I stood among the family I chose, Nathan, Noah, Caleb and Sophia, and I knew, finally, I had reclaimed everything they had once tried to take from me. This time, no one could erase me. After the scandal, my parents left the city. Rebecca vanished along with them, no explanation, no message. I wasn't surprised. She had always sided with them, even when the truth was undeniable. I thought I would never hear from them again. But then, one day, my phone rang. A known number. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. Olivia. I recognized the voice instantly. Jake. My breath caught in my chest. I hadn't thought about him in years. I no longer cared about the man who had abandoned me. But now, he was the one reaching out. I don't know if you want to hear me out. His voice was low and hesitant. But I need to talk to you. I frowned. We have nothing to talk about, Jake. Sarah and I. We can't have children. I tightened my grip on the phone but said nothing. She's tried everything. We've seen doctors, taken every test. And... He paused as if struggling to get the words out. She knows. I narrowed my eyes. Knows what? That you never had the abortion, that our child is alive. A chill ran through me. You kept the baby. Jake's voice broke slightly. And now, Noah is the only son I will ever have. My heart pounded. I knew exactly where he was trying to steer this conversation, but I let him say it himself. You think... Maybe. We could try again? Jake asked. His voice filled with hope. I made a mistake, Olivia. I abandoned you. I did the worst thing I could. But now I understand. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think that just because Sarah can't have kids, you can come back to me and Noah, as if nothing ever happened? My voice was cold. I just want to be a father to him. I took a deep breath. Jake, you gave up that right a long time ago. Noah doesn't need you. He already has a wonderful father. I heard him sigh in frustration. Olivia. Goodbye, Jake. I said firmly, and hung up. I didn't need anything from him anymore. A few days later, another phone call came, but this time, the voice was unfamiliar. Hello, Olivia, my name is Martha Parker, I'm Jake's mother. I froze. I know this may seem sudden, but I just found out the truth. Her voice trembled. Jake and your parents lied to us. They told us you had an abortion, that our grandson never existed. I closed my eyes, so they hadn't just erased Noah from the public, they had erased him from his own grandparents. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice emotionless. "We just want to meet him." She choked back tears. "If you'll allow us." I was silent for a long time. I had never considered the idea that Noah had paternal grandparents. I had never thought they might want to know him. But they weren't Jake. They weren't my parents. And Noah had a right to know. "I'll talk to my son," I said. "If he agrees, we can arrange a meeting." Martha broke down in tears. "Thank you, Olivia, thank you so much." Noah sat on his bed, his legs swinging as he listened to me. "So I have another grandma and grandpa?" he asked, his eyes wide with curiosity. I nodded. "They want to meet you. But it's your choice, Noah. If you don't want to, I won't make you." He thought about it for a moment, then smiled. "I want to meet them." The next day, Nathan and I took Noah to meet his grandparents for the first time. Martha burst into tears the moment she saw him, while George, a silver-haired but dignified man, took a long moment before he could speak. "He looks just like Jake when he was little," he whispered, his eyes glistening. Noah studied them for a moment before stepping forward and extending his hand. "It's nice to meet you." And just like that, a part of my past, a part I thought would never be repaired, found its way back. My life was no longer haunted by those who abandoned me. My parents, Rebecca, Jake. They had chosen their path. And I had chosen mine. I had a family I loved, a husband who stood by me, children I cherished more than anything in this world. I no longer looked at my past with pain or resentment. I looked forward, and I knew finally I had found true happiness. The story of Olivia Carter is not just about breaking free from a toxic family, but a testament to the power of resilience and determination. She was rejected, abandoned, but instead of letting her past define her, she built a better future for herself. This story reminds us that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who love and accept us unconditionally. In the end, what matters most isn't seeking validation from those who left us, but creating our own happiness. What do you think about Olivia's choices? About those who abandoned her and those who stayed? Share your thoughts. And don't forget to follow the channel for more inspiring stories about life and family.